developer relations team here at WP Engine, and today I'm super stoked because in this video we're going to explain how to build a simple contact form using Ninja Forms, their free tier, the WPGraphQL extension for Ninja Forms, and the Next.js app router. So let's dive right in. Let's talk a little bit about what contact forms are, and they're basically a fundamental touch point between site visitors and site owners, and it enables customer inquiries, lead gen, and an essential feedback that drives the engagement. Now, in Headless WordPress, this can be tricky since the front end and back end are separated. Well, this means that you're going to have to figure out a way for the front end to send that data to your WordPress backend as securely as possible. Now, here are a couple of prerequisites because I'm on the Ninja Forms webpage right now. And before we begin, you have to have an understanding of Headless WordPress concepts, the WPGraphQL plugin, and the Next.js app router in order to benefit from this video. And I'll leave all the linked out documentation and educational collateral in the comments, as well as a full-blown example repository so you can just pull down boilerplate code and try it for yourself. Now, what Ninja Forms is it's a flexible and user-friendly form-building plugin for WordPress, and it offers a robust set of features out of the box, and its core functionality is free and open source. We're going to use its free tier in this video, and then let me go over to the WPGraphQL for Ninja Forms repository here. And this is right here, and this is what we're going to use to expose Ninja Forms data via GraphQL. And this plugin will add the GraphQL schema for Ninja Forms, and it'll allow us to query and mutate for, form data, essentially. Now let's head over to our WP admin. I'm in my WP admin right now, and I'm on the plugins page here. And I've already downloaded the necessary plugins for this demonstration to work here in this video. We have WPGraphQL, which turns your WordPress install into a GraphQL server. We have the default Ninja Forms plugin, and then we have this extension here to turn this into a GraphQL schema for Ninja Forms, which is the WPGraphQL for Ninja Forms. Now, heading over to the left-hand side of the menu here on the main menu in WP admin, when you download this plugin, you'll have the Ninja Forms option here, and when we click on it, there's a default contact form that just says contact me, and when we click on it, let's look at it. It has a name field, an email field, and a message field, then a submit button. So we're just going to go with this default free tier version of this contact form that comes out of the box. Now let's test to make sure that the GraphQL schema and server is working within our Ninja Forms application here in WordPress. So I'm going to go over to the GraphQL IDE right here. And I'm in the GraphQL IDE, and let's go ahead and make a query that will ask for the form data that we just saw that the default contact form comes with in Ninja Forms. So let me open up this object, and we're going to have a form. And let's pass in some arguments, an ID, which in this case, the form's ID was the integer 1. Then we're going to have an ID type here, and it's going to be the database ID type. So those are its arguments. That's what we're grabbing it by. And then I'm going to open up another object here, and I'm going to grab the title of the form. And that has fields that we want. And then we'll open that object up, and that has nodes. And within those nodes, we can grab the field ID, yep, the label, and the type. And let's prettify that. And then let's see what we get back. Perfect. So here's the data, and we have the form data here with the title, which is contact me. The label name type is text box, label is email, the type is email, label is message, and it's a text area. Then we have the submit button. So this is perfect. This part is working. Now let's test a mutation. Now let's clear this out, delete this, and then we're going to set up a mutation in here. So we have a mutation, and we'll call that submit form. And then the arguments for this is we have a dynamic input, and it's going to be a submit form input. There it is. And we'll have a ternary, and then I'm going to open up an object here, and then we're going to have submit form, and then we'll have that argument as input here. And then $ input. Okay, that's perfect. Then we're going to open up another object, and then we're going to have a success message if the form is successfully, if the input was successfully sent. And then we will have errors that we will throw in case it wasn't. And then we have the same thing, the field ID. Then we're going to have a message, and then we'll have its slug. And let's prettify that. Whoops. I am missing, I think, a curly. There we go. Now let's see if this works. Excellent. So the success, it's true. The message is okay. So that means this is successful. Now let's go and double check if it mutated and submitted correctly. So we go into the submissions selection here. And then we're going to select the form, which is contact me. And here it is. Here's our successful input here. Hello there, and it's today. All right. Stoked. This works. Now, we're in the Next.js front end that we're going to use, and this is the app router version of Next.js to create the front end for the contact form that we have with the Ninja Forms WPGraphQL data. The first thing I want to go over is the API route that's responsible for handling the form submission safely. Now, in the app router, route handlers allow you to create custom request handlers for a given route using the web request and response APIs. Now, we're going to take advantage of that convention in this file here, this route.ts file. So let's dive right into this file and discuss what it's doing. It securely bridges a Next.js frontend, which is this right now, with a WordPress backend via GraphQL. So focusing on this post handler here, and let's highlight that. The code first reads JSON from the incoming request and expects 3 props, and that's name, email, and message, right? And if any of these fields is missing, it immediately returns a 400 and missing required fields error. Now, once that validation passes, the handler right here constructs a WPGraphQL mutation, which we played with and saw and tested in the back end. Down here, the code actually issues a fetch call to the WordPress GraphQL endpoint specified here in our environment variable. And then within that call, the headers include content type, which is application JSON, and then it has an authorization header built in from our environment variable, the WP_auth token. And that's passed in here. So basically, because the WP auth token is pulled from the process.env, it ensures that only this Next.js app holding this secret can successfully authorize and submit data to the WordPress endpoint. Now, here's the request body down here, and this body contains the query and variables object whose input includes the form ID, which is 1, then an array of object mapping each field's ID to value, so data.name, value data.email, and value data.message, plus a client mutation ID here set to contact form submission. Now, when that response arrives, the code calls await WP response.json and then checks both WP response.ok here with an if statement and response errors. Now, if either indicates a failure, it logs the first GraphQL error here to the server console and throws an exception. In this success case, when submit form returns something like success message true, right down here, the route returns a 200 JSON response here in the status. Now, any thrown exception or unexpected condition is caught by the catch block, which logs the error and returns a 500 response here. And finally, the file exports a get handler that always returns a 405 method not allowed down here, ensuring only post requests are processed. Now that we have discussed the API route in route.ts, let's go over to the server action responsible for interfacing with that API endpoint. I'll navigate over there, so I'm going to close this directory out, and I put this in the contact-us directory if you're following along in the repo. And this is the action.ts file, and you can tell this is a server-side component because it has the use server directive that Next.js uses. So this file isn't a lot of code. It's not a lot of lines of code, and it just basically acts like the middleware between the client-side form submission and the API endpoint. So let's go over the core functionality. So when a user triggers the form submission on the contact form, this submit form function right here is invoked, which processes the form data and initiates the HTTP post request right here, all in this block right here, to the base URL /API/contact endpoint. Now, this is the endpoint that we implemented in the route.ts file previously that we discussed. Then it executes the WordPress WPGraphQL mutation through the Ninja Forms API. And then you can see the rest of the code here. There's an if statement with some errors and handling with a string of messages here. All right, now the next thing I want to talk about is rendering the form on the client. And that file that's responsible for that is the contact-form.tsx file, which is in the same directory. So let's jump over here. And as you see up here, this is the use client directive. It's marked with, indicating that it runs on the client side, and it utilizes React's use form status hook to manage the submission states, which is right here, use form status. Now, let's go over the two main components of this form. It's a React component called submit button. That's one of two of the main right here. And this is the function here, function submit button, starting on line 8, right? And that renders a button whose appearance and behavior changes based on the form submission state. So here's the button within the return statement that it renders. And down here is the main contact form, right? Here that we're exporting as a function, which is the component that manages the form state and submission, which you can see here, which is message set message. And there's the use state hook from React coming here. And here's the rest of the function that's asynchronous handling the submission here. Now, one thing to notice in this file is that I decided to use the form component built into Next.js to keep things simple. You can dynamically fetch the form data from the Ninja Forms WPGraphQL API, but for this article and simplicity's sake, I chose the static form provided by Next.js. Now, before we try the form on the browser just to see if it works, the last thing we're going to have to check is our environment variables. So let's navigate over to the .env.local file and make sure that we have what we need. So obviously, I'm not going to put in my real environment variables. You don't want to do that because especially the auth token is private. But you want your GraphQL endpoint, which you get from your WordPress backend in the GraphQL settings. You want your WP_auth_token key and value pair here, and you put the auth token in there. And then the next public site URL, so whatever front end you have. And in this case, because it's a development server off Next.js, we're going to go over to localhost 3000. Now, just to note, you can generate an auth token through the OpenSSL command in your terminal. So you would just, let me grab the command for this here, and you would just open up a terminal, and you can essentially just, let's see, let me clear this out. You could paste this in, and then when you hit enter, it'll spit out like a random string, and you can use that. Now, obviously, that's not mine, but yes, you could use that. So Once that you set that up, you should be good to go. So let's go ahead and try it on the browser. I'm going to go back to the terminal, start the development server with npm run dev, and this will come off localhost 3000. So let's open up a browser off that port. And we have the Next.js page that's going to load, and that's the regular Next.js homepage. Oh, sorry. Never mind. Just kidding, guys. It's actually my WordPress data because I am using a query here that's querying for title and posts. I think I have the first 4 posts here. So this is great. This is working. Now, I want to visit the /contact us route, and here's the form. Awesome. Now, let me blow this up a little bit for you guys to see. All right. Now I'm going to test this. Let's cross your fingers, hope it works. I'm going to put my name. Let's try Franley the Manly, and then just my work email, and then just some random message. This is a test for the stoked out video. All right, now let's hit send. Should get a success message, hopefully. Cross your fingers. Yep, thank you for your message. We will get back to you soon. Now let's double check our WP admin to see if that submission was sent in there. Now we're going to get contact me. All right, there's our data. Franley the Manly, my work email, and this is the test for the stoked out video. Now it's stoked out because it worked. Now there was one last thing I want to address, and I addressed this in my article, which I'll leave in the description and comment of the video, but it's locking down the edit page on WP admin. Now if you're using a static form component in your front end, any changes made to the form structure in the WordPress admin can break the submission logic. So to prevent this, you could create a custom plugin on your own and it overrides its default capabilities. In my article, I have an example code block of a PHP plugin that you could essentially just copy and paste and create a standalone plugin. And then you would add it to your WordPress backend, upload it in there, and it will prevent any changes to the default form. So if you do need that functionality, feel free to go ahead and copy my code and just go over at a high level if you're not familiar with creating a plugin in WordPress, which I've linked out to. Integrating a contact form on Headless WordPress site doesn't have to be complex. By combining Next.js, WPGraphQL, and Ninja Forms, we built a secure modern contact form that connects your frontend and backend seamlessly. Now, as always, super stoked to hear your feedback and learn about the Headless projects you're working on, so hit us up in the Headless Discord, and until then, happy coding!